Are you listening?
This is the Rob Scott Show.
Damn.
I mean, really, like, if we're not trying to change the world, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Okay, hi. I guess welcome back after quite a while to the Rob Scott Show. How are you?
I'm good. It's great to be here.
It's good to be here. Yeah, I'm excited to get back in the habit of doing these. We took a little bit of time off over Corona to actually do a lot of really important work that I'm very, very excited about. We've retooled quite a few things, and part of the decision to slow this down was just that we wanted to do some of this deeper work on what our products are and what we're doing and all that stuff. And so many cool things have happened. Let's figure out something valuable to talk about today. But I also want to tell people that we've probably got, we definitely have a new training coming out soon that is going to be available, and we're really excited about it. And so I think Sarah brought up this idea of going through some parts of that training over the podcast so that you can get some of that goodness here as well. So,
yeah, I mean, I think it's funny because we took it off, but not because of Corona, but in the context of, this year and the pandemic, we realized that I think we would have taken off anyway, but we realized how kind of important it was to get really precise about these concepts that are foundational, well, to the business, but also what we think to the kind of the world. So Rob has been kind of on a deep dive of content, and I've been kind of on a deep dive of how do we then incorporate this content. But do you want to take a minute and kind of share about who you've been talking to and where some of these new ideas have come from?
I'm really excited, and actually we've done it. All right. So there's a guy named Dr. Gregg Henriques who I personally think is really in the psychology world as a thinker. He's like, if you think of all the big names of psychology like Jung and Maslow and Freud and those guys, like he's going to be that of this time, right? He's done this really big unifying theory of psychology that's very, very interesting. And so as soon as I sort of found his work, I reached out and we immediately started jamming on what his work is and what my work is. And we've done some cool things together. And I might be, writing something for Psychology Today soon, hopefully. And, but he also invited me into this theory of knowledge society that he has, which is a lot of academics and other people who are working on, things like psychology and psychiatry and sociology and some of these things. But not to talk too much specifically just about Gregg, but his work goes outside of just psychology and into trying to model complexity in the world. And I think that's really important because it goes way beyond just the mind and into sort of how everything kind of works. And so he's got this very overarching theory of everything. And then I think the work that we do works really well to understand that and apply that and be of use to people to wake up in really interesting ways. So Gregg has really enjoyed my fundamental shift concept, identity shifting as a concept. And I think, not to speak for him, but I think we agree that this and things like this are going to be required for us to navigate the further complexity that we're all sort of feeling through, the political stuff and the pandemic stuff and what social media is doing to us and all those different things. And so it's just been great. And it's led me to trying to describe this work in deeper, more complete ways than, just using it in a coaching context to kind of get more into the theory of it and explain it more deeply. And I don't know, Sarah, do you think that's been a useful endeavor?
Yeah, and part of the kind of I guess fun in rejiggering some of the business and how it's delivered is kind of stepping into that thinking space, that thought space. I know you gave a couple presentations. Being in kind of new conversations about this has allowed us to change kind of our model of how we're giving it out to other people ourselves. And part of the thing I'm really excited about is this training that you talked about and how for those of you who are new, our business is called The Fundamental Shift, and Rob has historically coached large masterminds, and we've decided to take some of the really special parts that have been behind the paywall in the group and bring it to the front and just put it out there for anyone who wants it. And so this training is going to really give people some of the specialness of that out front without asking really anything of them. And I think it just speaks to the importance of these concepts and the importance of this skill, and not only how it relates to psychology in the academic world, but how it can enhance really a lot of different areas of personal development and personal growth and unification. So yeah,
I
I'm
love
pumped
that.
about
And
it.
so we often don't get into some of the strategy of the business stuff and all that we're I guess we talk about sometimes, but that's not what I'm always dying to come on and talk about. But I'm so excited about this, and I'm glad you just mentioned that, because what I want people to understand is that there's a business part of this, so that Sarah and I can pay for our lives and do all that stuff. But I don't think Sarah or I are really that interested in hugely massive financial success. Like, that's just not our underlying. I don't want to speak for Sarah. It's certainly not my underlying financial motivation. Maybe
Right.
behind the scenes, Sarah's like scheming on how to take the world financially, but I don't think so. And so I think a lot of this has been, historically, as I'm looking back, not even totally consciously, but there's been a little bit of like, okay, we've got some real special sauce, and maybe a lot of people feel that way, but I certainly feel that way about some of our work. It seems really unique. That's now being validated by academics, which is really nice. And I'm seeing how unique it is in ways that I already kind of suspected, but it's now being
And not just validated, but integrated. So it's not saying, hey, you're right. It's saying, hey, what you've done and what I've done can really work together in a powerful way.
Totally. Yeah. Really, really interestingly. And that's, by the way, going out across many other paths too, like into what AI is up to and into what some, physicists are talking about. And just across the board, we're doing some really cool integrative work about how to change, humanity and behavior change and mental change, all the stuff. So in any case, I think for a long time, we've kind of hid things behind this important paywall, thinking that, people do sometimes steal our stuff and all these things. And so there are the business concerns of that. But I think a lot of what I'm really waking up to now is that it's kind of, and this isn't permission to steal our stuff necessarily, but it's not, we're not trying to hide it. Right. I do want it out there. And what we're going to do is we're going to build a free training. And it's my intention to like not even ask for an email for it. Like, I'm so sick of people going, hey, just tell me where they're literally texting me on some platform and they're like, give me your email so I know where to send this. And it's like, send it right here. Like, you're already talking to me. Don't make me do the smarmy marketing sign up thing. Right. Like, I'm just kind of sick of that. So we're just going to put it on the website and know that if you can get everything that you need out of that, that's great. Good for you. And please have it. And if you need more support, that's what we do more deeply in different stages, right? So there should be some really affordable way to go further than that if you want a little bit more support. And then on the back end, when we're doing some harder things, that's another tier altogether. And so anyway, then we're putting it through where we used to really try to deliver this work as quickly as possible to give you like the best breakthrough, the fastest, all that stuff. And now we're going to kind of take on more of a community aspect to this, where it's like you can get a lot of it very quickly, and that's great, but it also should make sense for you to be able to hang around and steep these ideas in, because it really does change potentially every dimension of your life. And if you come in and work with me in a 6-week mastermind, there's going to be 1 or 2 very loud problems in your life, and we'll fix those and get that all handled. But then a year later, coronavirus hits, or your partner cheats on you, or something else happens, and I want to be around to support people through all the different challenges that come up. So anyway, I'm very excited about what we're building, and we're looking at a cool new year.
Yeah, and I think the power of kind of this, and not only are we going to have it, like Rob said, right up front in this training that we've been building, but we're going to be here on the podcast with you guys talking about different aspects of it. We're going to get Rob on more virtual stages, but hopefully eventually live stages again. So because it has the potential not only to give you that really immediate personal breakthrough when you're in the things that you're looking to change about yourself, but we hope that this is kind of a movement or a way that we can kind of gift society to have societal movement as well, which can happen as fast as we can individually change.
Yeah.
So so that's exciting. But yeah, so we wanted to kind of welcome you guys back if you're listening, and just kind of set up the framework of, we're gonna dig into these different parts of what we're gonna be going on about it in the training with you here in kind of smaller chunks, and we just want you to have the opportunity to kind of hear our deeper thoughts on it that won't we've been brainstorming a lot, and we had to cut a lot. So
Yeah, and
we
let's
want to be able to
talk
give you
about
the
that,
more.
because I think a lot of people think of a coach as, okay, well, whether you're a life coach or a specific kind of business coach or a motivational whatever, there's all that, but like the level of complexity of what we're dealing with, we're going to break it down into sort of three layers, right? The first one obviously goes along with the whole name of the company, right? There is this fundamental shift that is this one thing that we really need to understand what it is and get it. That is very unique, and that is primarily what we really want to put up front. That's what's going to give you the most immediate wake up, a whole, just a phenomenally different sense of reality potentially, and all that. Then we have the ongoing sense of self that has to deal with all the challenges of life, right? What is the version of you that has great relationships and it makes the money that you want to make and has purpose and can leave a legacy and all the things that you as a human want to do? How do we run that in all the complexity of life? That's what identity shifting is, right? And it's deeply depends on this fundamental shift, but it is also distinct from that. And so, getting the fundamental shift first is the most powerful. Then going into identity shifting is how you really kind of get what you want out of life. And then what we're really trying to add to this is then how can we then change society, right? What does societal shifting look like meaningfully? Because I think that we're watching a lot of the complexity challenge, some of our base institutions, what news looks like, all these different things. And there are some real different ways with wisdom to approach this and find sanity and meaning in amongst the noise. And I don't want to only fix your private life, but this is all going to be in service of actually fixing society's challenges as well. And so that's what I'm just so excited about, those three levels, really making that kind of a system that if you wanted to, you could go all the way through it and really be playing much bigger games by the end of that than you may be today. So yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. So should we dive into any of that in the specifics, or what's interesting to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should maybe talk about how the kind of the first thing you have to get, in my opinion, and we can just kind of do this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you have to get to really understand kind of the power of the fundamental shift and the capability of what that can do for you is to be able to see your own attachment to meaning, which
Yes.
I'm sure we've said many times before on the podcast. But as I was sharing with you for this year, we're approaching Thanksgiving's tomorrow, Christmas is coming up, and it's for me, at least, it's unlike any kind of holiday season that I've ever experienced in my lifetime. And I think a lot of people are like, how do I navigate through this, being a pandemic and also wanting to see my family. And also I've been missing them. And we all live in a world like my family's a couple time zones away from me. So, a lot of us don't live like in our family groups. And I was just saying to you that it's just one kind of small example where I'm seeing my own kind of attachment to this way of being, we'll say, which is this holiday season and what it means and how we celebrate it, even down to the fact that Thanksgiving could be anything. It doesn't have to be a meal, but historically, you think of Thanksgiving dinner, you think of turkey and all this stuff. And it's like, is it Thanksgiving if we don't eat a turkey with, 20 people at our table? And how that our just brains get so kind of connected to these meanings. And just maybe in the context of that is to highlight other ways that we're doing that, and then how powerful it can be if we can break up with that, in the sense that for Thanksgiving, for example, my mom is one of 10, so I have a huge family, and I was thinking of them and how can we celebrate in a new way, because as having 20 plus cousins already, we're above the gathering capabilities. And so I'm like, well, let's Zoom, let's use some of this technology, because I'd rather have a little bit of time, even if it's in a different way, than no time at all. But like that took a minute, because I'm like, is that even going to be fun? Is it going to be worth it? Like, what if people can't show up? And it was just like, I was watching my own attachment kind of, get more aggressive in some parts and loosen in others. And it's so interesting to me, because it's happening all the time.
It's happening all the time. I mean, this is the meaning making process of humans. And this is what that, the training is going to go into much more depth about this. But this is, if one way to talk about the fundamental shift is really becoming aware of the meaning making process that's going on in your own brain. And that might sound very like, what do you mean, right? Like, what does that even mean, right? We're talking about meaning. What does that mean? What are you talking about? And it's so much more subtle and automatic. And for almost everybody, it's happening completely unconsciously. And I would sit there and argue that that is the source of all of our suffering, most of why we argue, why we go to war, the whole kind of source of all this. And there are attentional moves that we can do that can make us more aware of where we're getting attached to something that literally doesn't exist, right? Thanksgiving as you knew it last year isn't going to be, right? And then even if you choose Zoom, one person could come to that and be really excited about that. Cool, we've got a solution. Yeah, it's different, but this will be fun. Somebody else comes to it and is still just longing for what it was before, right? We want the same thing back. And because this is different, it's not okay. And that most people see those two things and they go, well, that's just how they are. But the power is in, you can decide way more than we realize how you want to be. Like what are you attaching your meaning to in one way? And this is happening in such recursive, subtle ways that to really become a master at this is a very, very deep and different thing. That's why it's like this fundamental shift in your cognition, right? In the way that you actually make meaning in literally every direction. So it's a really, really big deal. We water it down when we give quick examples like I just mentioned. Like you could be like this or you could be like that. That's like a single example. But Sarah, you recently said, I think on a group call or something, you were saying that once you see that you can do it, it's almost like even if you then notice that you don't do it a lot and you remain attached and you stay in these little suffering human moments, still knowing that you can is like this really powerful kind of realization, right? Do you remember saying that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, and I do think that's that's so true. There's so many benefits to just knowing that something is possible that you didn't know before. Mm-hmm. So not only seeing that it's happening, but knowing like, hey, I am empowered to be able to do something about that if I need to. Mm-hmm. Right? Like if you'll listen close, we're not ever really going to tell you have to do this or you must do this or this is the only, solution, but we're giving you all these options because there is such a benefit to having that tool available and to utilizing it when you're in a state of suffering of I miss my family or I wish it wasn't like this or blah, 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 just to like get out of that because so many people come to work with you and they're like, I can't get out of this. This is a persistent, reoccurring thing that's a thought, that's a feeling that's affecting my life and how I act with my family and how I act at work. And they're just stuck. And to kind of be like, hey, in the front end, before you get to a point where you feel like things are kind of out of control, there's this capability that you can have. And yeah, I do think, it's the same as like having, knowing your car hasn't started every time and you have jumper cables in your trunk versus if you don't. Like, it's like whether you need to use them or not, just knowing that you have that is like kind of a game changer in how you act and what you do and how you feel.
Yeah. And I think it's the way, like your brain is a continually adaptive system. It's trying to deal with the life that's in front of you all the time. And to do that, it's making meaning about that life all the time. And part of the reason that we get so stuck is that it's a bit of an efficiency of the brain. Like if I don't have to rethink things, I can just say, that person is bad, I don't like them, and that's a final decision, and I don't have to like re-look at that again, right? And in a lot of ways, that's great. That's an efficiency. That's very helpful. Jumping off of buildings is dangerous, so let's not have to reconsider that. We just know that we don't have to reconsider it, right? So there's all these like safety things about this. But for most people, while it's helping in a lot of ways, it's also shutting down options. And then because we're not very mentally fluid in being able to mess with our own meaning and see our own meaning-making process, we start to believe things to be completely, totally true that aren't completely, totally true. They're actually just preferences or ways that we're making up, reality in our own mind. And so the challenge of like, how do we do a new Thanksgiving, or how can I ease up from this? Being able to see that you're attaching a whole set of meaning that's then triggering a whole heuristic of emotional reality to a whole thing, and then not knowing how to change that at all, right? By just moving your attention around or messing with some of the meaning. If you can't do that at all, you're not free. You're completely stuck. And this is what leads to unconscious behaviors like addiction or self-sabotage or, procrastinating, or all the different overt behaviors that we kind of hate, that we know are bad, but we end up choosing, either on autopilot or because they feel good in the moment or whatever. And so, yeah, to overcome all of that is this one little move of attention to back up and see the lenses that you're, creating for yourself and the meaning that you're making. And as soon as you do that, it's literally like, oh my, whoa, I can't believe I was doing it any other way the whole time.
Right.
So that's this foundationally important, skill that we as humans are going to need as we keep trying to navigate, consciousness in the world and society, et cetera.
Yeah, I love this conversation already, because it's just kind of a teaser to all these things that I hope that we get to deep dive in over the next handful of episodes. But
Yeah.
this idea, of how we build truths and the places that our attention can be, and the awareness, and the kind of how we, I don't know, the beliefs that then impact our behaviors in both conscious and unconscious ways, the biology of our brain, all this stuff. Like, I'm so pumped to kind of deep dive into each one of these with you. And looking for me at the fundamental shift, and this might be kind of a boring example, but it's really, I think, a very highlighted way of understanding it, is if you have a bucket with a hole in it, and the hole's at the middle of the bucket, or the hole's at the bottom of the bucket, and you just can't see anything past, half full. You're like, I don't know where the leak is. Then you can do many different things to fix it. But being able to see, oh, there's a hole at the bottom of the bucket, can really be the single fix, right?
Yes.
Like, and I think that the fundamental shift allows, there's so many fixes in our world that I think we're trying to kind of, I call them like patchwork fixes, where they're not real fixes. They definitely help in the moment. They make us feel better. They may last a little bit, but like, there is to me, a very obvious permanent fix to what I think a lot of people are trying to figure out.
Yeah.
And I think the more that people understand, like, not how to change, not a different mindset to take on, not just like a different positive thought to have, or not just a new habit to integrate, but like to be able to see the mechanism of where meaning occurs for you.
Yeah.
The origin, whether you're changing it or not, but even just to be empowered and have that freedom to be like, oh, I see where that came from, even if that is all the way through to kind of something like Thanksgiving, that's just like woven not only for us personally, but into our culture as people, but to see like, oh, that's all coming from this, place. And I can see that place, and I can see how things are going. Like, that gives us agency to change it if we want to.
It's totally what wisdom is, right? So I think that we words often get kind of attached to other words, and the meanings are, this is a meaning making game. So what do words mean? I mean, this is what we're doing. But wisdom is not knowledge, right? Wisdom is more like proper judgment, or when you're not sure what to do, having a basis of choosing wisely when you don't know the right answer. Knowledge is, I know the right answer. Like, I know exactly what this is. Wisdom is when you can be in a new situation and go, I know how to wisely choose what's important here. And so I'm just remembering that when I first showed Gregg, who we mentioned earlier, what the fundamental shift was, and we were talking about each of our work, he was like, oh, we're going to change the future of wisdom with this stuff. Like, this is what this is. And that's really what we're talking about. So, it's the patchwork fix of like, hey, if you could just hold this value of integrity or whatever and make that your central value, or if you could just decide on this one purpose, that's meaningful for a period of time, but it doesn't hold up against a pandemic and someone in your life getting cancer and this challenge and that challenge, right? There needs to be kind of an ever evolving way so that the ways to adapt to the world that's changing your brain all the time. Like, So again, your brain is this system that's helping you adapt to complexity constantly, right? And in its interaction with the world, it's getting changed itself, right? So we always hear the, don't think of an elephant, right? Don't think of an elephant right now. I'm giving you a very clear instruction to do not think of an elephant. Don't think of its trunk. Don't think of its ears. Don't think of it gray with maybe like a circus thing on its back. Definitely don't think of that. And it's impossible not to if you could speak English and you're listening to those words, right?
Right.
So when we realize like how invasive language is into the construction of meaning that's going on in our mind, again, don't think of a red ball. Like just don't think of one right now. In fact, I'm going to tell you one more object in a minute, and I want you to definitely not think of it. Don't think of a glass of water, right? And so part of that is that to negate something, we have to hold the concept of what it is first, right? There's something that's going on. But why this matters is that every political dialogue you're listening to, every piece of marketing that you're listening to, every conversation over Thanksgiving you're going to have with your family is letting in meaning into your brain, whether you want it to be or not, right? And you could be thinking you're opposing it, or you could think you're for it. You might be making different assumptions about it and all that. But if you don't realize your own agency and how much you can change what things mean, you are going to be more and more and more a victim to kind of what you're being beat up by in the world of what's on your social media feed, what your friends said, what your parents say, what the old rules are, what your teacher told you, etc. And so for you to really gain this feature of how do I make sense of all this? How do I come at this crisis of meaning where we can't trust our social media feeds, we feel like we can't trust the news, we don't know what the best choices are, we politically are so divided, there's all these differences. How can I come to that with a real wisdom that is not getting lost in the manipulations of marketing or this influence or that influence, and really kind of get back to what's the right choice that honors, my highest values and what matters to me, et cetera. How do I even decide what those values are? This is all what we're talking about, right? And to your point with that hole in the bottom of the bucket, this is the foundational issue that we are lost on, that in my mind, like every other coach, almost all other forms of therapy and everything is trying to do this patchwork. It's like, oh, you were hurt when you were 6 years old by your dad and you can't get over that. That's incredibly meaningful work for a therapist to do with you. But just getting over that one issue doesn't change your ongoing meaning making about all the other things in your life, right? It's still just patchwork unless you can understand that whole function of like why that's hurting you and why you're still
exactly.
And not only can you put that down, but you can put down all of the other hurts that you've ever had too. Literally universally forgive everyone in this moment right now, be totally okay with yourself, carry on, be deeply confident, and your life is completely different because that's all up to you way more than you know it is, right? Now, that doesn't mean that somebody saying don't think of an elephant isn't going to invade your space. That's the part of like, that's why this is a skill. That's why this is not only a wake up, but there's like a grow up process after it to get better at it over time. But the wake up itself is so incredibly powerful and so amazing just to even know that that's going on, and so different for most people that's why it's quite literally the fundamental shift. Like this is the change that we need to make in human consciousness to thrive individually, thrive culturally, thrive as a society, et cetera. And
right. Yeah, definitely. And I think what's really cool about it is, and I don't know if many people know you like this, but I certainly was introduced to you, as a personal development coach. And I think of this as not personal development, right? Because you're working on the things about yourself that are personal to you and that you want to change. But it's like almost like personal development plus, because it spans out into psychology, therapy, other types of coaching, other types of training, other types of relating. And as Rob and I have kind of been deep diving into the business and restructuring, we realized one thing that we want to add is that there's all these relational aspects. So if you think about the things that you want to improve, that you would hire a coach or a therapist or a trainer for, you want to do them for you, but you want to do them so you can relate in whatever context in a better way. So if you hire a personal trainer, it's like you want to be more fit so you can go on runs with people or be better at your sports team or something. If you hire, a therapist or something, it's maybe because you're looking to have a better connected relationship with your family, or you're having trouble kind of relating with your friends, and coaching. You want to relate to your business. Like it is about what we want and how we want to improve ourselves, but it's like so that you can be
Yeah.
better in these areas of relating, which is why it matters to go to the source, right? It's why that the patchwork doesn't always fix things all encompassing. And if you can go to the source, then not only do you get that for yourself, but like you become better at relating, and you're thriving through, you mentioned things like, a pandemic, or I'm in California and we had a crazy year of wildfires where people kind of overnight lost everything. And so there's not only the relating that we choose to be in and that we want to win at, but there's the kind of relating to the world and the universe in ways that are really not in our control. Climate change, pandemics, war, things that are really kind of big and that impact us, and that kind of shake us up to what I talked about at the beginning, which is our attachment to, like, I know myself in this context, or I know this holiday with these traditions, like this. They can kind of shake us up, that aren't even things that we choose to be in, that have nothing to do, with us personally, or our family, or our business, or our relationships, that deeply affect kind of how we live on planet Earth. And I think this year has been an interesting mirror to see that people are realizing that is a skill that they need. And
well, it's
and
crazy
so I'm
because
pumped.
cooperation is one of the things that humans do better than all the other lines of consciousness on planet Earth. We cooperate incredibly well, and we are a global society now, and we're watching, for lots of reasons that we could get into in maybe future shows or whatever. But our capacity to cooperate well in some ways is working better than it seems like it is, and in some ways it's really degrading and going down. And so again, this place where we can bring some wisdom and some consciousness to what is it about cooperation that works? Where do we need to hold boundaries? How do we have societal stuff and governance work better? How do we have our family systems work better, right? There's a lot of deep, this expands into that, I think, to your point.
Yeah.
And I've got a buddy who's like, would you please just call yourself a philosopher? Let's get you writing books and doing all this. Like, that's I want to go write books. I want to do those things. The reason I'm a coach also, and maybe I'm not only a coach, but it's, if we just did thought leadership stuff and tried to change ideas out there, that's only one level of knowing, right? You can know how to go work out and not actually get a better body. You can know how to eat better and still not make those choices. So there's knowing about something is great, something you might get from a book, but then we have to embody it. Like, it has to become habituated literally down into our unconscious, so that it's not this effortful move to do the new thing I learned. It's got to become a part of us. We actually have to change who we are. And that takes experience. That takes like understanding and experience, some form of habituation. Again, not necessarily with willpower, but getting it down into the unconscious mind so that we're changed in our being. And so that so much of the brain that's not conscious and trying to do all the calculations and all the work and all the caloric take, just what's set on autopilot, is a better way to behave, be, relate, be a citizen, all the different things. And that's what we're innovating on in a really, really powerful way. And I think that's why this is so profound. And I just can't wait to keep sharing with it. And we've been working behind the scenes for a long time. I think now we're getting to where it's time to start just putting more out there and promoting. And it's not our intention to keep any of it behind the veil. We're going to be here to support you if we can, and we'll be giving you the best stuff we got coming up now and going forward. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and I hope to continue to share more with you, and I definitely would encourage you to reach out to us. So you can find us at robscott.com. That is getting kind of an upgrade. The Rob Scott Show is our podcast, and we're on Apple, Spotify,
wherever we are.
Find your podcast.
Yeah.
And we would just love to hear from you. And like we've already said, we're trying to get this out to everyone, because we think that it can help everyone.
And the thing too, that when we put it out, in whether it's a podcast or whether it's the free course that we've got coming soon, all that stuff, I want to remind you that if you know anyone else who's you think might find it interesting, or you think they're suffering, or you think they could use whatever, we want to have all the good stuff out there. So please definitely share this with anyone in your family, your friends, anyone who you think might need this kind of information. So Sarah, it's good to see you in this context. I see you all the time, but it's really nice to podcast with you again, and I'm happy to be back. So,
yeah,
yay! All right, so we'll talk to you on the next one. We'll see you guys soon. Have a great holiday, and just be kind to yourself and everybody else. Bye-bye.